All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Brady Chisana. Super excited for today's show, guys. We have Melissa Kwan joining us from Amsterdam today, I believe, right, Melissa?
Yes, for the second time, Adrian.
Oh, man. Okay, so guys, we literally have to take 60 seconds to tell the story. Melissa and I started the first run of this episode 2 days ago, right, Melissa? And literally 2.5 minutes into the episode, your boy's power drops directly out. I lose electricity for at least an hour and change. I'm like on my iPhone messaging with Melissa saying you're never going to believe this. So now this is round 2, Melissa. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we're good to go this time.
Yeah, second time's a charm.
Second time's always a charm. So guys, Melissa has an awesome story for us today. She's a 3-time bootstrapper, and she's built an incredible company called eWebinar that she's going to share with us today. Melissa, take the microphone. Why don't you take the first couple of minutes of today's show? Let the CX Nation know, number one, how did you get started in general, right? One of my favorite parts of the show is hearing how people took different stepping stones in life and worked at different companies and different industries and different mentors and all that fun stuff. Take the first couple of minutes to tell the CX Nation, how did you kind of get your whole career started, and how did you land at where you are today building eWebinar?
Yeah, that's a big question for 2 minutes, but I'll give it a shot. So this is my third company. Been a 13-year bootstrapper. And my first 2 businesses where I spent a decade in was in real estate technology. Previous to that, I was the last job that I quit was selling software at SAP. And then before that, I was in real estate for some years. So when I started my first company, I just combined real estate and software together and built a real estate tech company.
I like that.
Yeah. So my first company kind of like transitioned into my second. So even though it was 2 companies, it felt like one. And because we were bootstrapped and it was an enterprise SaaS software, I was the one that was doing all of the onboarding, all the training for my customers. And, signing a new customer is always nice, but that's the beginning, I guess, of your journey with them. And I had to use, webinars to onboard and activate every single company that I sign on. So the more companies I signed on, the worse that problem got, because I would constantly be doing these webinars that nobody would show up for. And at that time, I was also digital nomading. So not only was I doing the same webinar over and over again to launch these companies that I sign up, I was doing them on like opposite time zones of my customer. And I had always envisioned this product that would do my job for me, while I could go and live my life or have fun or do anything else. So that was kind of the beginning of thinking about eWebinar. My last company was sold in 2019. And while I sold the company and everybody was happy, I didn't sell it for retirement level money. So I knew I had to start something right away, because, whatever you start, it's going to be 5 years.
Absolutely.
Right? There really aren't any shortcuts. Like you might be more efficient at some things, but I don't believe there are shortcuts. You can only move as fast as time allows.
You're spot on. So, I love that you're calling that out, because it's the absolute truth. And everybody wants to go start a business, be an entrepreneur, be a founder. Okay, get ready to sign up for years and years and years of hard work before you catch anything, before you catch a fire.
Yeah. So I actually started eWebinar 2 months after I sold that business. I had a 2-year contract with that company, and I had my CEO like approve it. Right. I had to make sure that whatever I created under that company wasn't going to be, under their IP. But he knew that if he didn't let me do this, like I would leave much earlier, because I was just ready for a change after 10 years of being in the same industry. So that was the beginning of eWebinar. Was I really wanted to create a tool that could give people like me their freedom back. And I don't like to say like, this is a productivity tool, because I think that implies that we want people to do more work. That is the opposite of what I want to advocate for. I think people should do less work. I think people should work more creatively. And I think business owners forget that they start a business to be free. So I want to be the advocate for, use this because you want to spend more time with friends and family, because you want to travel more, not because you want to be more effective or efficient in your work. So I really started eWebinar to give people their freedom back. And that's exactly what we do now, is we turn any video into an interactive webinar that you can set on a recurring schedule. So you can run as many onboarding and training as you want, sometimes 1,000 times a month, without actually needing to be in front of a camera to do it live. But most importantly, without losing that personal touch that makes you special to your customer. So we build in like interactive elements that people can engage with, like polls, questions, quizzes throughout. So it feels more like a two-way experience and not like, a one-way webinar where you're talking at someone. And we have an asynchronous chat where people can ask you questions throughout and you can hop in to respond live if you're there. But if you're not, you can respond through email. So you're not losing that communication channel, even though you're automating that experience. And I think that's what makes this whole thing more compelling than just delivering a video.
I love that. Number one, thank you so much for sharing that. Number two, thank you for walking us through that. I think it makes a ton of sense. The one point that I want to jump right on top of that I love that you called out though is like, you're right. So many entrepreneurs and business owners and founders, we start these things, number one, because we typically have a calling or there's an itch or there's a problem or there's a thing that we just kept seeing that we knew there was a big old opportunity right in front of. But more importantly, we start these things because we're kind of like, we get to a place in our lives or our journeys or our career, we're like, no, we're good, man. We're going to go kind of build our own plan and we're going to kind of work on our own schedule. We're going to try to go find our own clients, like that type of thing. That's very common with every entrepreneur. But you're right. It's really about the freedom and it's really about the ability to make choices and decisions on your own and do your own thing, right? And obviously, no offense to our guys, our folks listening that have W-2s right now, because I get it, man. It's nice. Nothing is better than having a safe paycheck, an environment, a culture, a team, a business that you feel like you're a part of, and that you're. But you don't really have the type of control that you think you do, even if you're leading a team or leading a department, or even if you have you're running a P&L inside of it, you think you have full control. It's not really true. Like you're a part of somebody else's business, right? But there's another piece. Like I just think like when you talked about the digital nomading, and this is unique because Melissa, I'm not gonna lie, we don't have a lot of guests on the show that have that luxury or that fortune because so many of these same guys and gals are busy either building their teams, leading their teams, or they're stuck in geographical places where they built their businesses, right? And I love that you call that out because it's just it's one of the big things that I think a lot of people that are not entrepreneurs or not founders or not business owners, what they forget is like, you get so much more from just having your own business. You have that freedom. You have that ability to make decisions, choices. You get to pick your own investments, frankly. I mean, you typically make the biggest investment when you decide to make to bet on yourself, obviously, the day that you decide to make that decision. But I love that you're calling that out. And I just think it's inspiring. I think that, I wish companies would allow some of their employees to have a little bit more of that freedom. I know that some like Fortune 500 execs might poo-poo on this, but like, I'm gonna make a guess that their productivity and the returns would end up going a little bit higher if they did give a little bit more of that freedom. I know there's reports out there that suggest that CEOs want everyone to come back to the office, right? But I love it. I love what you're doing. I love what you're building. I'd love to dive into the first pillar of teams. So like a couple things. Number one, clearly eWebinar is built to help teams that are doing webinars again and again, conversations, presentations again and again. I'd love for you to spend a couple of minutes talking about some of the companies that you're working with, some of the clients that eWebinar are servicing today. Spend a few minutes talking about, I guess, some of the things that you've kind of been able to see that have happened inside of their teams. That number one, eWebinar has really been able to kind of provide a bunch of additional support for. And then number two, some of the ways that teams have actually taken the tool and how they've really kind of baked it into their day-to-day. I'd love for you to spend a few minutes to kind of talk about that first pillar of team.
I want to say that the biggest impact that we have is like when you relieve a team, like a person who's running your trainings, right? Like nobody likes to do this, right? Like it's super exhausting, especially if a bunch of people sign up and then people don't show up. Like say like, 50 people sign up, 3 people show up, you're still on the hook for doing this.
Totally.
And so there's a lot, it's like kind of soul crushing.
It is. It's defeating.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely defeating. So, and then you've got the other side where if you have 2,000 people sign up and 1,000 people show up, it's also hard on you mentally because now like you need 2 other people running the chat while you're doing this. And it's like public speaking, but there's no feedback. So I think there's 2 sides. Like I've done both and it's both hard mentally and it's just stressful.
Yeah.
And a lot of our clients will say a 1-hour webinar takes half a day. Because now you're prepping, you're getting yourself hyped for it, and then after you feel like you have to decompress and you feel accomplished, and you don't want to do anything anymore.
You don't want to do it. It's almost like acting, Melissa. You're
totally.
So like that prep and that decline of it, that is way longer than a 1-hour webinar.
So I want to say that the one biggest benefit is that we relieve the mental stress of the person or the team that's doing that.
Yeah.
So, and that's huge because now they have much more mind share and headspace to do other stuff.
Yep.
Right. Because the people that are hired for running these programs, they're not just running webinars. That's just one of their tasks.
Yep.
Right. And they know they're not doing enough. So they might be doing it like once a week, once a quarter, once a month, Tuesday at 11. But they know that by fixing that time, they're not serving customers in every time zone. And most people aren't going to make it. Right. And then they try to repurpose the content. They send it out through, they send it out a replay, but people don't watch replays. Our emails are like replay graveyards. People sign up, they think they're going to watch it. So actually they know they're not educating as many customers as they want, but this is the best that they can do.
Yep.
Right. So the people that are hired for this are hired for writing knowledge bases, running events, right? Like doing, talking to customers, doing a lot of other stuff. So webinars is one channel that they communicate. So when we remove this from them, we also allowing them to spend their time on things that they might not be able to get to.
Yep.
So I think that's, two different benefits. And I think the third, and how we help them is we're helping them accomplish a lot more because you don't need to do this live. You can create so many more different content tracks.
Yep.
Right. What we're hearing from our customers is they used to run one onboarding a week, but now they're doing different onboarding for different product lines for different types of users multiple times a week.
Nice.
And they just have, their support team. Sometimes it's outsourced, sometimes it's in-house responding to chat, because not everyone can run an amazing presentation.
No. Yep.
But everyone can respond to chat.
Totally. Yep.
So now the best person that was designed for running the best training records the best version of themselves. And then they do that, they record, say, 10 videos, they turn it into eWebinars, and now it just runs on autopilot. And the one benefit that actually we don't hear a lot, but I know this happens, is succession. Like, how hard is it to hire someone who's amazing at running presentations, an amazing speaker, right? Who works all the nuances into every single thing, who's like selling as well as training? Totally. Very, very hard.
Yeah, very hard.
So sometimes when that person leaves, well, who's going to replace them?
Yep.
Or when that person goes on vacation, well, who's going to run it this month? So like, I know that I've left my previous company for 2.5 years. I know that I'm still doing some of the trainings.
Yep. Yep.
And I know that some of our trainers have left our customers' companies, but they're not rushed to hire a new person because their trainings are actually still running. So they've got some time before they need to replace it. So from a team perspective, I think these are the benefits that we've been able to give them.
I love it. So Melissa, number one, awesome. Number two, all of these different points that you're laying out there, it just makes me think about smart, modern, customer-focused business leaders. We're constantly thinking about ways that you could do business both internally and externally asynchronously, right? If there's a way that you could leave people multiple options of how they want to digest information, how they want to interact with information, how they want to interact, that's, to me, from a CX curation or CX optimization perspective, that's brilliant. That's like, if you're not thinking about that type of stuff, then you're not really kind of thinking about all the different folks that are engaging with your business, your product, your service. So I love, number one, just this asynchronous piece that you laid out. Number two, man, and I know we're inside of this first pillar team, but like, what you're making me think about as I'm hearing you lay these out, like, there is so many companies out there where the opportunity cost or the waste of having some of these, let me give you an example. I've worked at a bunch of these venture capital backed startup companies where, to your point of like, for lack of a better term, the A players, the person that's got charisma, energy, they can speak about the business, they know exactly what their part of the operation is, they can get in a room full of brand new trainees for an hour and just go through the whole damn book about everything that they need to know about working there, right? Those people. I've seen so many of those venture capital backed companies literally leverage their directors and VPs. These are the guys and the gals that, number one, are probably the most expensive people in the business. Number two, they're the guys and gals that you want closer to your product, service, or your customers than anybody else because they understand this stuff so well, or the team, managing the team. And I've seen a ton of these companies leverage folks like that when instead they could actually take a very small amount at a time, have them do some of this type of work that you guys do at eWebinar, where you can sort of do it once, do it extremely well once, and then repurpose, re-leverage, and share. I can assure you there's not enough of these companies that are thinking about other tools like eWebinar that can aid that. Here's the other thing I always thought about. Even if you were Elvis Presley and you walk into that 50-person training room and you fucking rock them, you still need everybody learns differently. So I would make a guess 50% of those 50 people, if you're like me too, by the way, you got to go back and either listen to it again or maybe look at verbiage or look at words. So like maybe like a few hours later, you're thinking about, wait, what did Melissa say about that? What did she say about that one thing? And then you have to, so my point is like, people learn differently, right? And I think the world's finally getting to this place of accepting where everyone's got different learning paths. So like even this notion of just like the evergreen of being able to go back and look at it later, I could see that being a huge gain, not just for customers, but for teams, team training and customer training and all of these different things. So I think awesome ideas here. Just generally, I think it makes a ton of sense around sort of how you've been able to help some of these companies that you're working with.
I mean, on that asynchronous piece, though, I want to bring up one thing is like us as consumers, we already consume content asynchronously. I think this is the thing that companies forget.
I know.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
what if I told you, Adrian, you can only watch your favorite show next Thursday, 7 p.m.
Yep.
That's not going to fly anymore.
No
we
way.
did that like 15 years ago.
Definitely.
So
TGIF, Friday nights are on the TV.
So why is it that like as a consumer, we need Netflix, we need Apple TV. But when it comes to business, we're like, oh no, you have to fit my schedule because it's more personal. Totally. How is it more personal when I'm not even going to be there?
Yeah.
And I think this is one thing, like this is one mental hurdle that a lot of our customers need to get over before they even sign up for us is, well, but I need to do this live and my customer needs to see me and needs to talk to me. Otherwise, it's not personal. They're going to feel like it's impersonal.
Yep.
Well, you know what's impersonal? When you're not there at all.
Yeah, right? Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Right? What's personal is giving me what I want at my moment of intent and letting me learn asynchronously and letting me reach out to you.
Yep.
And that's like the consumer is all about me.
Yep.
Right. So I think there's still in B2B at least needs to be a mental shift to more to the consumer and less about companies thinking they're so important.
Yep.
And I think that's also a huge opportunity for customers or for companies that realize this, that see this gap, to better align their strategy and their communication and educational strategy to what the consumer wants. We're all consumers at heart, right? Why don't we just give ourselves what we want if we were our own customer, right? If that makes sense.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. Melissa, I'd love to jump into the second six pillar of tools. So number one, and you can answer this however you'd like, but number one, I'm just interested as you and your team in eWebinar built the business, built the product, built out all the solutions that you're talking about right now. I'd love to kind of know just like number one, what type of tools you invested in or what type of tools really kind of helped you get there. Here's another way that you can answer it. What are some of the tools that you're seeing your clients use, and what are some of the ways that you're figuring out how eWebinar can jive or can connect with some of the tools that your clients are using to make for an optimal experience? I'd love just to kind of hear you talk about what you guys have seen in the journey of building eWebinar as it relates to tools and all the different pieces of technology that you're seeing your customers leverage every single day.
Yeah, so we're not as close to our customers as enterprise companies, right? Because we sell, like, our product is low price point. So we start at $100, right? So we're a product-led movement, a product-led company. So I don't have personal conversations that much with our customers, so I can't really speak to what they're using. But as for us, we're probably a much smaller company than the ones that you're used to working with and that you're used to speaking with, right? So our whole goal from day one was, how do we start the smallest tool stack possible? Like, start with the smallest stack possible, right? I think when companies start, like, you're high energy and you want to sign up for all these things and you think you need everything. But luckily, we have a CTO who thinks, okay, it's more important for us to adopt something and keep processes super simple and super small and learn what we need along the way than to sign up for things that everybody else has.
Yep.
So of course, communication, we use Slack. And actually, if we were going to communicate with our partners and our customers, we add them as an external member to our Slack channel.
Awesome. Okay.
Or vice versa, because they allow you to do that now, which I don't know how they do it, but it's so brilliant.
Yeah.
And like, it's something that we can't live without.
Okay.
Right. But as for everything else, like, we don't have, Basecamp and Asana and, all this stuff, right? We use Monday.
Okay.
For literally everything. And
awesome.
I love that because I love Excel. Like I love spreadsheets. Everything I do is in a spreadsheet. I mean, now it's Google Sheets, but that's the thing that I've seen over and over in my career that be adopted.
Yep.
Right. We've had in the past, we've bought like super fancy, project management software, all those things like Jira, all those things. Nobody really used it because we were so small.
Yeah.
And those things were so process heavy.
So process heavy. Yep.
And, no one's there to set it up either. And we're such a small team. Like we don't have time to learn it. The thing that people always gravitate to is a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And, and Monday's just the one we landed on, but I know there are other things like that as well. But everything works as a spreadsheet. And you can export it however you want. You can turn it into a grid. But we were able to, because of Monday, cut everything else. And even like, I even use that as my CRM.
Fantastic.
Because I have a fairly basic CRM. And then the other big solution that we invested in, which I love and hate at the same time, is HubSpot.
Yep.
I feel like I'm in HubSpot jail. And I think that's their business model, is to put me in there.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, it ties into so many different things that you're like, every day I look at this, I wish I was using something else. However, we're never going to get rid of this, but I also don't know what else is out there. Like I heard someone say before, and I never forgot it, the best CRM is the one you're not using.
That's true. It's very true.
So, we use HubSpot for, of course it's our CRM, but it's not my personal CRM. It's like our user CRM.
Yep.
But it's our website. It's our landing page. It's our ticketing software. But it does everything like 65% well.
Yeah.
It's our email sequences, right? And then of course we have Amazon for hosting and our system emails and stuff. But like really Monday and HubSpot are like our two biggest things.
Okay.
And we haven't outgrown them yet. But it's, it starts from a place of what is the least amount of tools we can use?
Yep.
Not just because of the cost, because we're a small company, but because we want adoption. Like we don't want so many things linking together. And, of course we use eWebinar for all of our demos. I don't do demos. If you come to our website, like the demo is our product. And then all of our training, all of our onboarding is that. Actually, there is one new thing we signed up for last week. Now that we're bigger, is we just signed up for User Pilot.
Oh, very cool. Nice.
Yeah. So we're finally at the point where we're like, okay, we need to take our activation and our onboarding and fixing churn like more seriously. So that's one thing we're getting into now. But I think the point is we want to make sure that we grow into something.
Yep.
And, a company like us probably wouldn't, like other companies of our size probably wouldn't sign up for HubSpot as early as we did. But we wanted to be 1 or 2 years ahead, and it's important to us that we grow into a solution. I'm kind of like that with like our lawyer and our accountant as well. Like I don't go for the cheapest option. I go for the option that I think we can grow into.
Yep.
And that is something that has always worked well for us.
I think number one, I think that's brilliant. Number two, I love your candor on this. I think super duper smart. I think so guys, same with us, CXE, we use HubSpot. I did the same thing Melissa talked about. I literally, before I even had a stable of clients, I was doing everything in HubSpot only for the sake of what Melissa said. I knew, like from the vision perspective, that as we grow, as we scale, as we have more and more and more clients, and then I also knew that, guys, when you start a bunch of these businesses, you start to get a different type of spidey sense for how different revenue opportunities are going to present themselves if you're listening to your customers and your prospects really well. And so I wanted HubSpot early, Melissa, for the same reason you said. I knew that there was going to be all these things we're going to be able to do. Plus, just similar to you, I've been in venture capital for over 15 years now. So I wanted to make sure that everything was tracked, logged, and calculated so that in those first 12 to 18 months of me getting CXC off the ground, I was still kind of somewhat measuring scale, and I was still somewhat measuring, okay, when this isn't Adrian doing every sales call, every demo, every client interaction, I wanted all that stuff logged. So I had a way to be able to unpack it later and be able to start thinking about how to backfill and how to start to grow the team, right? But here's another thing that I love that you just called out. It allowed me to avoid a lot of noise, Melissa, meaning like it became really easy for the first 12 to 18 months to just delete on all of these sales inbounds, meaning like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool and sexy. That's gonna screw me up for 30, 60, 90 days. Plus it's going to cost me X amount of dollars a month. Delete. Cool, that sounds great. But then I love the other point you say. It's literally me and two other people. Who's going to implement this? Who's going to integrate this? Who's going to take the time to sit down and train people like us that are typically doing something like every 30-minute slot of the day, who's gonna like, so that was the second thing. So then I would start deleting those messages. And I feel you on the HubSpot gel. You and I should propose a whole content piece to HubSpot on HubSpot gel, by the way. They'd probably pick up our phone call on that one real quick. But I hear you. I think that it can feel like it's gel, but I think, again, a big thing that we see with our clients at CXC, depending on really sort of, number one, how you're being supported and how you're leveraging the information that you're putting into it, it can absolutely feel like gel. But it can also show insights, and it can show themes, and it can, at a minimum, it can do the information aggregation. It's so freaking hard to do when you're a busy startup founder, or when you're busy as a VP or a director leading a team, and you got all this stuff going on every damn day. So I love that you're sharing that. One last thing I want to call out. When you brought up the user pilot, out of curiosity, what made you guys? You had a couple comments about it, but I want to hit on that one again. What made you lean towards like a user pilot as far as getting additional feedback, instead of maybe leveraging some of the other feedback tools that are out there that are, easy and light and maybe even free? I'm just curious, what gravitated towards user pilot that became such an interesting feedback option for you guys?
That is a great question, and a great segue to the power of social media. So if you follow me already on LinkedIn, you know that I write 4 or 5 times a week on my experience bootstrapping 3 companies. It's a $0 marketing strategy for us. But there are a group of people that do that on LinkedIn. And the director of marketing from User Pilot is also one of those people. And I think it is so important nowadays, because when people buy from you, like your company, they're not just buying your product, they're also buying who's behind the product. And the more you put your name out there, the more familiar people are with your name, you almost feel safer in their hands.
Yeah.
Right. And that, I think, is what happened here is, I know that there are other solutions out there, probably at least 10 that are really good. But Amelia and I have, chatted, quote unquote, chatted over LinkedIn, email. I follow her newsletter. I love her content. She's authentic, transparent. She talks about the company, how they build it, how they help customers. They send out case studies. I read all of those. And it's actually part of my own journey to learn more about, customer experience and all those things, because I don't come from that world. Like I'm a jack of all trades founder. So to gear up for, really focusing on activation and churn, I've been reading so much stuff, like books, newsletter, all this stuff on product-led growth and activation. What do you have to care about? What do customers care about? What do you have to track? And when it came to selecting a solution, my mind was really just set already on User Pilot because of their director of marketing, that I feel like I have a friendship with now, right, through social media. And I think that's really the power of putting your name out there and writing and like really building in public, right? And I think not just founders are doing that, like a lot of executives are doing that now. Like it just depends how big your company is. But we did actually look at a few other solutions. There were things that were cheaper, but I never believe in buying the cheapest thing. Like that's not how I make decisions. I make decisions based on ROI. What is the best solution or person that I can hire with the money that I have, the money that I can afford? And then it goes back to the original point about like, we only pick solutions that we can grow into. Like we pick solutions that are bigger than us today because we are going to be bigger than us today. And that was really important. So I think like really feeling like there's someone that takes care of me on the other side because I know this company, I think that was super important. And I think that's how people make decisions about buying us. Right. And second is like, I feel like it's a solution that is bigger than we are. And that was important because I don't want to outgrow them. I want to eventually grow into them.
Very cool. I love it. Awesome answer. And I think, Melissa, I'm sure we'll get into it towards the end of the episode, but like, guys, Melissa does some awesome posts on LinkedIn on a regular basis, as you just called out. I'll have Melissa shout that out at the end so that you can check it out. But you're spot on about, people that kind of roll their eyes at folks like us, Melissa, that are putting content, putting ideas, putting experiences, putting stories out there. And like, okay, come on, here's another person that's just you. Number one, you do it because it's hard, really freaking hard. Number two, it takes some brass to be able to get up and share things because let's live it. We live in a world of haters. That's why there's such few successful people.
Totally.
It's way easier to hate than to be successful. You can pick and choose. They're both actually difficult, right? Being a hater is really difficult. Being somebody that's extremely successful and puts himself out there every damn day, that's really hard. Just pick and choose which one you want to be in, because the rewards and the fruits of the labor are very different for both of those camps. But some of the stuff that you post, remember, I don't know if Melissa, you remember on one of our first chats, you posted something about some of the things that you learned about the podcast that you posted, right? And I immediately hit you up. I was like, dude, I love that. Number one, awesome. And then, guys, I get this question constantly because of the CXC podcast. I constantly get people ask me, Adrian, how'd you start the show? Adrian, how did you start to grow the audience? You know, how did you get to 100 episodes, 200 episodes, all the stuff? And Melissa nailed it in her one LinkedIn post where she laid out all the things that she learned. But guys, the credibility piece comes from that. Like, think about it. When you're giving people, I joke with my family and friends, right? Free advice all of the damn time. After a while, when somebody's ready to buy, ready to go, there's a need, there's a pain, there's something that they need help with right now, and they have a few people that have given them constant feedback, ideas, suggestions, possibilities, all for free. Number one, there's already credibility gained from that, right? Number two, like I've learned, Melissa, even with CXC, as we've grown our companies, we have the great fortune of working with more and more and more companies. I was telling you this the other day, almost every single solitary one of them has come from the podcast, and it's some vice president or director of customer success, customer experience, customer support, client services that you embed the customer facing term that they're running. They reach out, and I always ask, hey, so where'd you find out about us? Where'd you learn about me? It's the podcast. So I listened to X number of episodes, or this one episode really just, you knocked that out of the park with X, Y, and Z when you know, and the point being here, guys, is like, that is, in a way, it has absolutely become a part of modern selling in today's world. Like, putting stuff out
it makes
there.
you real.
It makes
Like,
you
it
real.
makes it makes your company a person, right? We
Yep.
used to do a lot more conferences, and now everything's super expensive, right? Like, we used to meet people in real life, and like, it puts a human behind your software.
Yeah.
It makes it real. It's like a review.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I think that's the new way of selling. Is like, what's the next best thing to actually meeting you in person? Is like meeting you on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's not just like having this conversation like we're doing right now. It's like you're getting to know how they think and how they run their company. And I think it's hard to get started because, you know, you read this stuff and you're like, oh, these people have so much ego and they're so lame, right? And you don't want to be lame.
I know exactly.
Yeah, and everybody has that. Like, I had that. But you know what? Like, people that have been doing the same thing for so many years, we really downplay the knowledge that we have because we think it's common sense.
Yeah. Yep.
But whatever you know, someone is starting to learn it today.
Yep.
And think less of LinkedIn like a Facebook, like, here's my status update. It's actually like a micro blogging platform.
Totally it is.
I think that's a better way to think about it, is
100%.
like, whatever you think is common sense, someone else would be like, actually, like, I never thought about that. And I'm going to change the course of how I'm running my business because you said this.
Yep.
I'm constantly surprised at how people react to my post, or they message me privately because they don't like to post, publicly.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that are like that, but you just never know like who you're going to help. And writing every day and forcing yourself to think about one new thing a day, like that actually, like the byproduct of that was surprising for me was how much it forced me to think about my business differently.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I've also attracted a community of founders that I now kind of have at my fingertips that I will never meet in real life, but I still feel like I'm friends with. Totally. That I can ask any question.
Yeah.
And I'll get an answer within the next half hour.
100%.
So there's all this other stuff that kind of comes with being kind of lame.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
But there's, I think I always say, like, if there's one day I feel like I don't have to put myself out there, I'll feel very successful. But, we're not there yet.
I love it, Melissa. Let's dive into the third pillar of process. So, all right, when I ask this question, I'm typically talking about like every customer-focused business leader has a different way of thinking about how they wrangle processes, their business scales, right? So like on one part, it might be living playbooks. On another part, it might be the standard operating procedures for tools. On another part, it can be the ways that you're mapping or doing journey analysis. You understand sort of how your users or your customers are flowing through it. I'd love to kind of hear you spend a few minutes talking about process as it relates to eWebinar though. So like you guys have been at it for the last couple of years. You have grown the business. You've worked with some amazing clients across the world right now. just spend a few minutes kind of talking about, like, as that journey got deeper and deeper and deeper and more complex, and as you figure more and more stuff out, how did you guys kind of deal with process? Was there a short list of things that you and the team would kind of focus on? Was there tools that you use? How did you kind of manage the stuff as you're growing, and allow for all the pitching and the pivoting that goes in to growing a business and to getting a business off the ground and to getting a customer base started?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, especially for, a startup founder. So I had, as I mentioned, this is my third business, but I had two before this with the same co-founder, and now I have a different co-founder who's also my life partner. I came from 10 years of having zero process, and that was really, really painful because I was also new
Yeah.
and my co-founder was new. Like, we started working together the day he got out of school. So he was never in a company. He never learned any sort of process. So we kind of just winged it. It was fine because the company stayed pretty small, but it was painful because he was the bottleneck, because he was the CTO. He was the bottleneck to everything.
Yeah.
He was the only person who could write features and check in code. And you don't realize how not having process actually limits the growth of your team.
Absolutely. 100%.
Because nobody else on the team was able to stand on their own because he was so territorial. But I didn't have the know-how and the knowledge to challenge him. So that was, I think that was the best partnership that I could have had at that stage of my life, I learned that I couldn't do that again. And luckily, coming into this company, David is my life partner and my co-founder. But he's, he worked in Microsoft for over 15 years. He's had 3 startups after that. He's 12 years older than me. So he has had a much longer career than me. And he's a process-driven guy. Like, he's led teams of 100 engineers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, Todd, who's my COO, he was not trained as a product manager formally, but he's also in his 50s. And in his 25 years of working for other companies, he was always the product manager for them.
Okay.
So he just learned process through osmosis.
Yep.
So here I am coming with zero process into a company with 2 guys who've just had 20 plus years of this. So I think I was very lucky to come into that.
Yeah.
And our attitude towards process from day one was also the same as everything else: is what is the least amount we can do possible to be most productive? Because I'd also been in situations where I work for other companies where people just love drowning in process. So they never do anything.
Totally. Yep. They wrap you up.
It's like, oh, should we do this feature? Well, let's talk to this person and set up this meeting. And I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
Yep.
Right. And in a startup, you need to be fast, right? You need to be agile and, with thought and consideration, but you need to move fast.
Definitely.
And so we decided early on that we were only going to have 1 meeting a week, and the whole team's remote. Everybody's a contractor. I wanted it that way because I was like, I know I'm not a good people manager and I really hate employees. So I came into this company saying I'm only going to hire contractors, but that also allowed us to hire anybody anywhere in the world, give them complete freedom over their time. And that's the company I want to build.
Yeah.
And the people that fit in that culture love it. And those are the only people that we attract. So we have people everywhere in the world. Mostly our dev team is in Vietnam and in Ukraine.
Awesome.
Yeah. But then basically, like, we only have 1 call a week with the whole team. And on that call, it's an hour and a half. And we just we update each other on what's going on. And if we need to, we talk about the next set of features that we're going to move into the planning board and then move into next, which is to be developed next.
Cool. Okay.
And outside of that, I just chat with the non-product team constantly through Slack.
Okay.
And David does most of that, with his product team, through Slack as well. But we are super cautious that everything has to happen asynchronously, or Todd and I work closest together. We'll just hop on a quick call to do, this and that. But every single thing is managed through Monday. And then Monday also has these kind of IFTTT automations, right? If this moves into the planning board, then it goes into review. And then if this goes into review, then it goes into next. Everything is kind of automated in that way. And then the devs, when they run other things to do, they can just go there and pick up a new task.
Okay.
So we always make sure that in the next board, there's always new things to pick up.
Yep.
And if devs are running out of that, then the next call we have is to figure out what else goes into planning to get spec'd and then goes into next.
Got it.
So it's like a well-oiled machine at this point. And then of course, David, he's a CTO, and he checks everything one last time before it actually goes out. And then he does, the updates. But because I work with people who are so process driven and reliable, the best thing you can have as a CEO co-founder is you never have to check anybody's work.
Yep.
Like back then, like I would be, constantly asking my co-founder, is this happening? Is this going out? Can I tell the customer how behind are we? Like I had zero visibility. But now if I want to know, hey, what's happening? I go into, what's being worked on. And then I go into what's getting pushed out next. And I know exactly what's going on. I can go into the planning board and see what's in the wish list. I can clean that up myself. So having full visibility is awesome.
Yeah.
But it goes back to, because we made a point to make everything super simple, this whole process is now adopted. Whereas back then I was trying to force certain things, but nobody was adopting them because we had all these tools that were supposed to help us put a process together, but nobody actually wanted to use those tools. So nothing ever happened and everyone just winged it. And that was 10 years of my life.
Right. It's so fun. So number one, fantastic answer on process. Number two, I tell people constantly, like, I know process doesn't feel or sound sexy at all. I totally get it. Standard operating procedures, right? Nobody's getting hot and bothered about that. But I tell people that, like, process is literally like the glue that can oftentimes hold those four pillars together, because process entangles into how the team needs to operate or what the team is doing. Like, you'd be blown away by how many companies we've worked with that are doing anywhere between 10 and $20 million a year. And you come in on day one and they want to optimize their CX and they want to revolutionize their customer centricity approach. And we'll start with, like, let's look at your playbooks. Let's look at your SOPs. Show us where, as a new customer, as a new employee, give me the playbook, baby. Let me see it. What are you talking about? What playbook? And I'm like, okay. So then me and my team, one of the first things that we're doing is we're literally going in and we're mapping across the team, all the different players, all the different roles, all the different responsibilities. To your comment about, so like your partner, like the 20 years of Microsoft plus all of these other successful startups, not at all surprised the process is completely infused in their day. That's part of why Microsoft is one of the game-changing companies on planet Earth that it is. Number two, successful startups that I've seen and that we've worked with, oftentimes their process game is solid, man. That's why there is a buyer on the other side that says, wait a minute, not only have you achieved X type of revenue and Y type of customers and maybe Z type of product build or product market fit, but you've got it all easily. You've created the process that allows this maybe to be a simple merger or to be a simple acquisition. Like, process is really, really important. I think the last thing is this. You'd be blown away by how many people don't have the damn answers to this stuff. So if you don't have answers to the different sections of your playbooks or your SOPs, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. And I promise, Melissa, similar to you, I've spent my entire life building companies. I call myself like a business bonfire building expert. I've never worked in a Fortune 500. I've never worked in companies with tens and tens of thousands of employees. I've literally been building companies and bringing them from basically $0 to $10 million my entire career, right? And essentially, I think as I've gotten deeper into the career, not having those answers, you said this somewhere in your answer, it 100% stifles growth. It 100% gets in the way of not just financial optimization, but typically just like even product and selling segmentation, like, or in shorter, getting better at qualifying who the hell you should spend your time with, or getting better at knowing which customers might have a lengthier sales cycle, but their LTV or their actual monthly or annual spend, it's worth it. It's worth spending that extra time. It's worth spending that extra CAC to be able to bring them on. Last question I have for process, then I want to dive into the fourth final pillar of feedback. But I have to ask this, and you can plead the fifth you want. What's it like building a business with your life partner? I have to ask.
Yeah. I think for me, it is the best thing, like best feeling in the world. Like for me, it is like, I can understand why for other people it might not be, but I'll give you some background to it. I wrote a bit about this today on LinkedIn as well. Is I was so tired of managing engineers because I didn't know how for 10 years that I came into this company and I said, I am never going to have a tech co-founder again. They're super annoying. And so I hired a dev shop. And the thing is, I don't really know, like, I know how it's hard to build software, but I don't know how hard it is to build software. I now know how hard it is to build software because now it's beside me. But
Yeah.
I hired my friend's dev shop, unfortunately. And I wanted them to build like version 1. Well, I can just focus on the business. Like, how amazing is it if I could just focus on the business and someone else builds the technology and the product? And, of course, it's your friend's dev shop, and, they promise everything and you think it's going to work. It doesn't. So it doesn't work out. And it didn't work out because while they were a great development shop for components of a platform, they were not that experienced in building like from the first line of code, which is like a different skill set. So they hugely underestimated the time and the capability required to deliver this product. And at the time, like, David was a, fractional CTO for other companies. I knew he could code, but not like, I didn't know how well he could code. And he was like, nothing was working, and he was criticizing this and criticizing that. And we got into a fight one day. I'm like, well, why don't you help out? Like, I don't know. Like, I can't challenge my friend. I don't know what they're building. And then so he starts helping out for free. And then things start working. And anyone in a software company knows, like, even if you can't build software, you know what bad software is and what good software is. One works and one doesn't work.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, holy shit, like, you can really code. Like, I've been with this guy at that point for like 5 years. I didn't know he could code to this level.
Okay.
So I was like, well, why am I paying these guys like hundreds of thousands of dollars for them not to deliver? And at that time, like, the dev shop was also struggling because they knew they couldn't finish, but they wanted to get paid. So they were wasting resources and time. And I wasn't going to pay them if they weren't going to hit the milestone. So both of us were not in a good place. So I was like, okay, we need to just move on from that relationship. Why don't we work out an arrangement? You become my co-founder and we could build this company together.
Yeah.
So that was actually a conversation we had about a year into me working on eWebinar.
Okay.
And of course, it was challenging in the beginning because you don't talk to your life partner the same way as you talk to your boss.
Correct.
Or any colleague, right? Like, everything you would sugarcoat with your colleague, your friend, but not your life partner. You just say it.
Yeah, right.
So it's very hard in the beginning to find a communication method where both people don't take it personally.
Yeah, yeah.
But once you figure that out, and if you can figure it out, how incredible is it to build a company with your life partner where you don't have to share it with someone?
Yep.
Like, if we sell this company, we own, 90% of the company. Like, we have family and friends investors, but not having to split 45% of the company to someone else.
Fantastic. It's fantastic.
That is amazing.
That's
and
fantastic.
Also, like, at a startup, I say everything has to move fast, but when you're working with someone in your house, it moves twice as fast.
Definitely.
Because I'm no longer calling my CTO off the hook. Hey, there's a problem. Something is down. This customer has a problem. Can you fix it? Like, yes, we don't really have a lot of separation, like, between life and work. But at this stage of our company, we don't want that separation. We want to work on this all the time. And then we take our weekends very seriously. So we don't work half of Fridays and we don't work weekends, but we now have a process that works for us and a communication method that works for us. Nobody's taking anything personally anymore.
Good. I like that.
And because the company's doing well, this is the best feeling in the world. But I can imagine if, in instances where money is a problem, then it could be, not so good of an arrangement.
Totally. I love it. Well, number one, thank you for that response. And I think it's amazing. I know that I joke with my wife all the time. I'm like, I want you to work for CXC, baby. She's like, first of all, she's like, I basically already am because I listen to you every single solitary day. And so that's number one. But she's an incredible salesperson. And I keep saying to her, like, baby, I think we're at the point where you should sell. Not only that, this, you have heard me do, and go to your point of view webinar, she's heard me do the manual thing thousands of times, Melissa, I promise you. So she can literally recite in her sleep. But her thing is always, it's the last point that you just said. She's like, she likes our separation. She likes that in the morning. I go to CXC. She goes to her software company that she works at. And but it's funny. I do get some of the things you laid out, because it's funny when you're in this stuff and you're building it, having somebody that knows you, not only you so well, but understands like the space, the opportunity, the ideal customer profile that can totally get a bunch of wins from this thing. It's exciting, man. And nothing's more exciting too than if you very few people, successful people even, get to make money with their partners. That's just not a normal thing.
And you're on the same schedule. That's
Totally.
amazing. Like, and we travel 9 months of the year. Like, with my other co-founder, we were at different time zones, so we work differently. But now it's just like, not only are we working on the same company, rooting for the same thing, serving the same customer, we're on the exact same schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome.
I love it. And good point. Yeah. Because my wife and I we have different schedules. Great point. I want to jump into the fourth and final pillar, but this is fantastic. Feedback. Let's finish on feedback. So I'd love to kind of, as you've grown eWebinar, take a minute or two just to kind of talk about what are some of the ways that you guys have been able to collect, assess, and act upon your customer feedback. And then you've given us a bunch of ideas for how the team is kind of interplayed, but I'd love if you have any thoughts around sort of ways that you're seeing maybe even your customers leverage employee feedback. I'd love for you to spend a few minutes talking about feedback.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of visibility into our customers' companies, but I can definitely speak to ours. And feedback is how we determine our roadmap, right? And feedback is not just, Adrian, I'm giving you this feedback. Yep. Right. It's listening reading between the lines in our case, because everything's text-based, yep, of what they're asking for, what they're complaining about, what they wish they could see more of. But while we take everybody's feedback very seriously, we are very careful to say no to things that we don't want to be. So what are we not, right? We are not a CRM, right? We are not a learning management platform. So anything that is not core to our business, we just say no to, right? Of course, like every single person has their own opinion, right? Everyone wants you to be the one single software that they buy because they don't want to spend money on something else. Yep. Oh, if you just had this, that would be amazing for me. Yep. Well, I realize that would be really amazing for you, but what you're asking for is a whole different company.
Yeah, it's a different thing. Totally different thing.
Yeah, like, so to give you an example, it would be so amazing if you guys had a recording software so I didn't have to buy Loom. Well, do you know how big Loom is?
I was just going to say, Loom is a massive company.
Do you know how much funding they got to build that little recording thing? And yeah, of course it would be amazing if I had it, right? Or like, oh, it'd be so amazing if you guys had better, emails, so I didn't have to, buy ActiveCampaign. Do you know how big ActiveCampaign is?
Totally.
So we are also very careful to make sure we don't invest so much into a particular segment of our software that we don't become another category.
Yep.
Because it would be easy, right, to do that. So the way we counter that is we have as many integrations as we can get a hold of, as we can build on other solutions that our customers use. So if there's, the most popular CRM automated, marketing software, we're already integrated with them. But we keep a list of things that people ask for, and we keep it in our wish list. But we are also very careful about how we communicate with our customers, because it's very important for me not to just make people happy. Like just because you're my customer doesn't mean I have to say yes to everything.
Yep.
And I'm not going to say yes to you just to appease you. So I think saying no to a customer sometimes agitates them. It could be offensive, but saying no and providing a reason makes them a partner.
Yep.
Right. So if they're like, well, I want this, and I'll say, okay, well, that sounds very personal to you. And I know why that's important for you, but here's why we're not going to do it. And so I just tell them, so they're not waiting for it, or they feel like they're not heard. So that's how I communicate, is I want to make sure, and I'm also very careful about not saying yes too quickly, because I don't want people to be like, okay, well then I'll just sign up when you have it.
Yeah. Right.
Because we need the revenue now. Yeah. Right. So, and and the thing is, right now, people are so discerning, and it's so hard to get their credit card, that they're like, okay, well, you have these 1,000 features, but this one thing you don't have. So I'll wait till you have it. So I want to make sure that people take their time exploring what we do have.
Yep.
And then when they ask for something, it's a bit of a bonus. So I think it's kind of multifaceted. It's like, we listen to everybody, but we're very careful as to the feedback that we take. It has to be core to what we do. We want to provide the best video consumption experience, the best webinar consumption experience possible. So anything that feeds that, we take it very seriously. Anything that is kind of on the peripherals, we probably say no to, but we communicate that to the person that's asking, so they feel like they're an adult, right? That they feel like they're part of our process. And then 10 out of 10 times, they'll be like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. So I can probably solve this differently.
Yep. And I love the fact though that you went right to that notion of partner. I think what more customer focused business leaders need to almost make it like a constant target or a constant bullseye on is, how do you not just keep a customer, retain a customer, keep a customer's LTV going up and to the right? How do you convert them into a partner, a strategic partner? If you can become a partner, your LTV and your retention becomes a totally different conversation. Plus, then you get the power of promotion, where then those partners will get up on the top of a mountain and yell at 100 promoters for you, right? Or they'll find the next 100 people to come into your pipeline for it. So I love that. I love that advice there. Melissa Kwan, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Before I let you go today, where can people find out, number one, where can people get in touch with you? And then where can people find out more about eWebinar so that they can find this awesome business that you guys are building?
Yeah. So if you want to connect with me, it's, Melissa Kwan, Kwan on LinkedIn. Of course, I post daily about bootstrapping 3 companies. And if you want to check out eWebinar and see how it can help you, your business, your team, it's eWebinar.com, spelled exactly as it sounds, just eWebinar.com. If you hop into the demo, of course, delivered through eWebinar, either myself or my team is managing the chat. So any question, just text them to me there.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Melissa, and we'll make sure that we share all that in the show notes when we post. But this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Enjoy Amsterdam and best of luck to you in the future.
Thanks so much.